It feels really great to be in this position where I can moderate sort of a family reunion, which is what seems like from just a guy watching the film. This has got to feel like for you guys now. It's good to have mom and son over on this side, and this is like Uncle Rick, I guess, over here. I don't know. He's sort of the father of it all on a certain level, right? He really gave birth. But my first question, 12 years of production, a year of release, promotion, awards campaigning, which you would have been in the throes of exactly at this time last year. And now a year passed. But I'm really wondering what it feels like a year later to have left something behind that was a part of your life, you know, for so long.
I think I just now feel this fall that it's over. We were theorizing when it was over because it wasn't over. It was still like, even the film had come out and we're like, still felt like, we're gonna shoot this year? We didn't really accept it being over. And that went on for a while, but I was really sometime this fall and like looking at the film just the other day, doing a commentary track, I was kind of like, yeah, it's starting to fall finally a little bit into the past.
Well, the last year we kind of spent more time with each other than we had in all of the previous years because we were constantly together at these events and these press things. And
yeah, before that it was just this sort of very gradual thing, and then suddenly it's like, now we're like working together 24/7 basically, and there was such an emotional kind of hangover after all of that. That's like what I've been expecting now, is that I'm finally kind of past that, and that's like the final kind of leg of like that experience, and it's just like I'm finally like over the Oscars and like now it's like, wow, I'm on the other side.
I feel like I was really emotionally grappling with last year, the end of this art project, this experience that we all had together. And that whole awards gauntlet, which is so opposite of this experience. And I don't know why there was a part of me that was like, I don't know why it came to this head within myself, this strange logic of like, okay, it's great to win awards and everything, but I would trade all that to keep shooting this movie. And I couldn't really put the movie to rest in a way, like accept that we were really done with it.
Well, Patricia, you had presumably a near out-of-body experience on Oscar night when you actually did win an Oscar. So I'm really curious to hear you perhaps compare that feeling with your feeling of watching the film for the first time, because I hear that you actually only watched Boyhood, not having seen it along the way either for the first time in a rather spectacular circumstance.
Yeah, well, Rick had shown me a rough cut at 5 or 6 years, but then I hadn't seen it again till Sundance, and I've never seen it again since.
When you did take it in, experience the movie done as a whole thing, no longer a little personal project, art project, I think you guys just called it, that you made on your own, with 1,200 people, you know, at the big theater, you know, the Eccles and Sundance.
We all had that experience.
Yeah. You had, presumably you'd been watching your film through the years, though. Oh,
absolutely. You know, finishing it, but to watch it with 1,200 people.
Okay.
We had a little test screening with, I don't know, 40 people, just to, it kind of help you on your last few trims or whatever. But to see it with 1,200 people who you didn't know, that was a very different, to feel it bouncing back.
And you had a little team meeting with us before. Like, okay, here we go. We don't know how this is going to go, guys. You know, it's late at night, and people have been watching a lot of movies. And
they're probably tired.
And the kids had never been in a movie like that either, by the way. You know?
Right.
They'd been making a movie for a long time, but the experience of having interaction from the public and critics and all that shit. So we felt really protective of them. Yeah. And we all felt really protective of this movie. Like, this whole place may not get this fucking movie at all, but it means a lot to us. So fuck it, who cares? It doesn't matter to them, who cares? We love this movie, no matter what. They throw apples at us, whatever. Let's do it, come on. We're proud of this movie. And we were so blown away by the response because afterwards, like, a 60-year-old lady was crying, an 18-year-old was crying. They were like, standing ovation, and they were like, this is my life, this is my life, this is my life. And it was like, that was the intention the whole time, was this human experience.
Ellar went into that screening unknown and came out with people wanting to hug him, and you were now their grandson, son, whatever. It was funny to watch that.
Every member of the family.
People were just like, you're, you know.
Yeah.
And for
It's
you,
very intense.
for you that day, Ellar, what had you seen before then?
I mean, I had watched just the constructed film once. Rick gave me a DVD, and I watched it by myself, and probably watched it 2 or 3 times, I think, like that day. And
I advised
it
you
was,
to watch it alone.
That was very, yeah, wisely so.
Like, you know, you're going to have to develop your own relationship with this movie, with yourself at all these different ages. I knew it was a powerful thing. I knew it would be you were in such a unique, you and Lorelai. I gave you the same instruction. Of course, Lorelai didn't listen to me and watched it with her boyfriend or whatever. But you actually did it the way I thought you should.
I'm definitely glad I did.
Yeah.
It was a very personal experience, like, on so many levels. And, and it was, I mean, I still had a very strong emotional reaction when we watched it. I mean, really, it's like I'm like afraid to watch it now because it's just like I can't. Like I kept thinking like, oh, if I watch it enough times, it'll like become easier and like won't handicap me for like days. But
The power would be somehow
but
reduced.
It's not really. It's still hard, or not just hard, but just intense. You know, it's just very intense, and like to be having this like sort of catharsis reaction on, you know, on stage in front of 1,000 people is a physical sensation.
Were you glad that you hadn't been watching it through the years? And I'm sure you were very particular about not having him watch it as you went through the years.
It never crossed my mind to.
Yeah, and I
Have
never
the
really
actors
wanted
want-
to. I think I was kind of happy to have that removed.
Well, because it didn't feel like that much of a movie we were making. We were totally relieved of the pressure. You know, when you're making a movie, it's like, well, this thing's going to be out 9 months from now or a year from now, and there'll be distribution and marketing to do. And we were in our own little bubble of this little art project all these years. It was only the last couple years that I think we were starting to talk to you and Lorelai about, you know, this thing will come out someday and it'll be weird. You know, I don't know. I was starting to feel like, okay, this could be a big deal in their lives, and we had to kind of prepare for it. I think I remember telling you, like, just because this means a lot to us, don't expect anyone to.
No one's gonna care.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah.
I was preparing you for like being possibly disappointed that, you know, no one sees it. You know, so I was
Yeah,
Eric,
so we just went in so casual, like.
or you know, like films don't really change your life. You know, I was taking another view of like having made a lot of films. You know, some kind of
It's not a big deal.
seemed to, yeah, but
I kind of was worried, me and Ethan, I remember talking to you about both sides. Like,
yeah.
if it's a big deal, people start suddenly getting all weird with you. Like, hey, you have this new value in their eyes that you didn't have before, and they're suddenly projecting this weird thing on you. You're the guy from the movie, and
Patricia, did you continue to try to give Ellar counsel and advice in the year of the release and promotion of the film on how to deal with all that?
I just felt like, whoa, man. Because I'd done a lot of movies, but me and Ethan both were like, fuck, I've never seen anything like this. I've never experienced anything like this. And how the hell are they doing this? And I just got worried about them, and I was blown away by Ellar moving through it really gracefully and acknowledging the weirdness of it, but also like moving through it in this incredibly emotionally mature way that I don't think I ever would have had the capacity to have. Because it was a total meltdown, bizarre experience. It really is a strange experience. And there were so many things along the way of making the movie that were so non-typical of making a movie. Like one year the movie company forgot we were making a movie and they closed their books. So Rick was like, well, my house burned down, so I'll just write the check this year.
Had that insurance money.
Yeah, I mean, weird
I'll
shit
float
like
it.
that. Like, hey, wow, it really sucked at 8 years if we had to stop making this movie. So, I mean, they were so disconnected from it, and it wasn't coming out, that every year it was really about the experience of making a movie, like a like a art camp, like a troupe of artists exploring this thing without any agenda of the outcome, really. I mean, Rick knew the outcome, and we were in the moment with each other, but we never imagined that outcome.
What about the issue of the outcome in the sense of like the overall shape of the story and where it might go over the 12 years? Different people I've heard say different things about how clear it was in your mind, you know, what this final film would be like from the get-go. So,
Really? Because I've always heard everyone say it was really clear.
I think it would lend itself kind of the methodology of to think it could have gone in a million different directions. But I didn't really feel that way. I've always felt we kind of knew where we were going. I certainly felt you know, kind of like life, you know, you're going to get somewhere. You don't know exactly where, but it'll be pretty close to here, you know. And that's where we ended up. And people always ask me, like, you couldn't have possibly known, you know. And I was like, well, it is the tone I was hoping for. It was the best version, I'm happy to say, of what I hope to connect to a potential audience, that this cumulative effect of watching so much life go through this family, these 4 people, and to see that I thought there could be this extreme identification that could happen, just the power of cinema. You know, we had bet on that the whole way. So to see that actually happen was great. It was, you know, like, okay, was the best version of what we could have gone for. It could have not done that, I guess.
But the first time I talked to you, the first time you called me about it and talked to me about it, you told me all these structural elements that are in there. You get remarried, you become a teacher, blah, blah, blah. All of those kind of anatomical, you know, structure remained exactly the same. Now, he said, even then, there's going to be a presidential election one year, and their parents are co-opting the kid. He didn't know it would be Barack Obama. So that...
you didn't know that?
The future filled in some blanks. Would he go and become like a jock? That would have gone a slightly different way, but still his mom would have gotten divorced. Still his mom would have had an alcoholic ex-husband. Still, this family would have dealt with that. So Rick was like, yeah, I'm opening spaces to feel things out, but there was always a structure and the vibe, the feeling, the humanness.
Right.
He described the first time we talked.
That was the fun life project of this. Like every year I'd call you, you know, as we were getting kind of close, we'd end up the previous year and say, okay, next year, either you're moving or we got teaching job or whatever relationship, wherever we were. And then we'd get a little closer, maybe a few months out, we might talk on the phone and then pretty soon you'd be here. We'd be in your room rehearsing the next day's scene and perfecting the dialogue and all that. But there was like structure and then specifics and then final, you know, points. But because we had put so much time into it at that point of being those characters, people always ask, oh, was it tough to get it back in character? And things like, never. It was no conscious effort whatsoever. It always seemed like, you know, running into, you know, like you do with a long-term friend or something. You haven't seen them in X amount of time, but you pick up right where you left off. And that's how I saw these characters every year, that we were picking up with them. But a year plus or whatever, minus had gone by, and we could just pick up right from there. It was always fun to just connect, sometimes throughout the year or sometimes just near the end with Ellar. We'd go have lunch and just talk about it. And I was always just gauging where he was, you know, if developmentally, and then just massaging things to kind of where I felt he was.
Also,
And running ideas by him, and as Ellar got older, obviously, he participated more and more. And
They're conscious.
yeah, it was.
by the end, they were really throwing in so
yeah,
much.
it was like Ellar's
The kids were.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're co-writers, they're co-creators, the way Patricia and Ethan, you know, when they're young, it's a little more of a, you know, it's a different relationship. But it's great. It's like when your own kids, you know, you can have a different level of conversation, different questions in the air. It's just that much more rewarding. And we felt that the whole way on this. I think the film itself was maturing and feeling better. You know, every year we were always like, this was the best year. Those last 5 years or so, we're like, God, this was the best year ever.
I was going to ask you that.
And it was just maturing. It was like life is better at 17 than it is at 13, 14. You know, it's just kind of, it was you coming into your own. You got your own girlfriend, you got your own car, you got a job. It's like, life's more
like
fun.
Rick was like, yeah, he's going to get a girlfriend, but I'm going to wait for Ellar to get a girlfriend before we put it in the movie that he has a girlfriend. Like, let him have that real experience.
Do you guys all agree that it felt like each year was the best ever?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, the momentum and the excitement and just the engagement and the awareness of just how, like, deeply emotionally invested we all were. It's like we started to realize that and just like what the fuck? What is
Every
happening?
year-
How do we do this? How did we get ourselves into this?
Every year was intense. Every year was charged. Every year was a year's worth of thought and feeling and played out. And usually a 3-day intense, you know, we're shooting a lot of scenes, a lot of movement, we're cramming in a lot in 3 days. So it was a hustle on a physical, technical level.
Yeah.
But then emotionally too, we had a lot to say each year.
But I did feel kind of magical, too, about the first year.
Yeah.
They were such baby ducklings, and they were so, like,
Yeah.
just little magic things. And when I first came to town, you know, I got introduced to them, and then I had them for the weekend at Rick's house. And so we played games, and we made macaroni and cheese, and read books, and did art projects. And there was something beautiful about bonding like that, and them being little babies, and they were just so damn cute. It was outrageous.
That first year, do you remember by the time you're reading Harry Potter in bed and we're talking, you guys have a moment there. It was like 4:30 in the morning. Like, I didn't really know. We had these 3 days to shoot, and it was like, I thought each year would be about 10 minutes, and we were probably 27 minutes or whatever for that year. It was just, okay, I learned a lot about what we can do, but we pushed it to the max. But, you know, I was with such troopers, you know. I just realized, everybody's in, cast and crew. Even young Ellar at 4:30 in the morning still,
Yeah,
you know, I was like,
pulling it.
wow, this is something special. I hope we don't have, it can't be like this every year, but we were out of the blocks that first year was magical, yeah.
And then there was other weird things, like you come back a year later, yes, you see them, they're changing. You see the crew coming back, someone got married, different things happen in people's lives, and then they'd pull out boxes on the set, and you'd be like, oh, they still have that picture. Oh, they kept that, they stored that for a year. There's an impermanence to film and filmmaking. You make something and it's gone, and you never see it again. And with this movie, there were little tendrils that kind of came back around, and like the things you grew up with in your grandma's house, that picture, or there it is again.
And our props, whether it was a car, you know, the cars would come and go, and, you know, just, seeing those same picture frames and the same, you know, every year we were pulling that out and decorating the house. It was special. It was like, here we go again.
Ellar, when did you become conscious of bringing yourself, your own life, and your own development into the movie role? Not right
I don't
away.
know.
Not at 6, right?
Yeah, no, but it was.
Man, I felt you did from the beginning.
I mean,
not,
there was a certain amount. There was
Yeah.
definitely a certain amount.
we talked
of
about things. We, like, how do
awareness
you
of
feel
it.
about this? And you were bringing stuff from the beginning, but in a more like actory, writery, you know,
Yeah.
We
it evolved.
were
It was a
asking them, like, guys,
gradual-
what books would you be listening to? And we had that mural on the wall. Like, what would you like on the wall? I like pirates. I like ships. I like. Okay. So-
Dragon Ball Z. Okay,
Yeah,
what games are you
exactly.
playing? What video games? You know, we were always trying to get stuff out.
But he started like that with
There
this
was,
kind
there
of
was
respect.
there was a certain point when it changed, though, definitely. And I think, like, maybe like 11 or 12. I think like that camping scene. That's always what I remember. Like that was definitely a big moment of just kind of learning that, like, hey, like this is like these are real ideas that I have that I can like. It's like a real. I don't know. It's like as a kid, it just seems so like anything you think is just so kind of like, oh, you're a kid. It's just so sort of useless or like, you know, just I don't know, just nothing. And then to like be given that space to like this is real. This is what I'm thinking about, and this is what's going on.
But that was a good year. It was like, okay, it was just father-son year. I mean, there was a little bit before and after, but it was really just,
Yeah.
you know. So that was the year to really step up and talk about girls, talk about what ideas and your best 3 films of the summer, and you know, you were bringing so much that year. That was a lot of fun.
Is there a particular moment that you will always remember from production, and does it match the same particular moment that you maybe know and love in the finished film? Or are there some things that just mean more to you?
I mean, definitely what sticks and with me is just the last moment. I mean, that was like everything surrounding it and leading up to like that, you know, because we had such a short amount of time to get the sunset.
I had 3 big goodbyes. You know, we had the scene with Ethan at Antone's, the goodbye with Mom. Each of these are big to me because we're saying goodbye. And then the final one, Lorelai, she sort of drifts. You know, she's older sister is back to college or whatever. Her last scene, you don't get a goodbye. You know, you aren't leaving her. You know, so that didn't really warrant much.
She already left.
Yeah, but yeah, the 2 big goodbyes, and then kind of the final goodbye. You know, to the movie. That was, I'll never, you know, when will you ever have an opportunity to ever feel that again? You know, I can't imagine ever feeling that way again, but it was really just magical.
And to just be, I mean, to be at the end of what for me had been such a massive kind of experience, and only like, you know, only still very much wrapping, I'm still wrapping my head around what it is, but it's certainly at that moment, it was very much in the throes of just kind of like coming to terms with what this project had been to me in my life, and like what we had done, and that it was coming to a close. And I think like that, I don't know, that sort of bittersweet excitement, and just like, and I don't even know the word for it, but just that the struggling to be present, like that was very real for all of us. And like, I think that does come across on screen, you know, and it's like for different reasons, but it's still the same. It's the same thing. It's like coming to the end of something, a chapter or a part of your life, and just kind of like, I don't know, wishing that you had been there the whole time.
And that your character and yours, I feel, that last line, you know, it's always right now. You know, you had earned that. But how did you feel when we watched it with an audience and everybody kind of laughed?
It was such a relief, you know. It was just like it.
That played the way you thought it might?
I don't think we.
I didn't
think we expected.
No,
it
we
to
didn't.
be
I didn't see it as a big
joke.
laugh line. That's why I brought it up, because we were both like, "Was that funny?" I mean, it's kind of like,
We
you
were
know,
serious.
it's where we're
Very
at. It's
serious.
where your character, like, yeah, it's always right. There's something about having seen you grow up and then talk about.
I mean, I think it's just like, it's because it's so simple, and it's so kind of like right on the tip of your tongue the whole time, but it's like very much like life. It's like you're always looking for something, for the moment that's gonna like make the movie interesting, or like be the thing that happens in your life that like makes you a worthwhile person. And it's just like, no, it's just, and there is, it's hilarious. It's hilarious that, you know, that you spent the whole movie wondering what was gonna happen, and then at the end it's just like, no, this is all that happens.
Yeah, but
Rick
this is
took
what it
away
is.
all the
just
firsts,
what
too,
it
on
Yeah.
purpose.
So much about what
It
the
was
film
like,
isn't.
not the first time you drank, not the first time you kissed, we don't see the graduation scene, we see after the graduation, like, all those moments are removed.
The scene you guys have in your worst day ever speech at the end, that is kind of capturing a big life moment when your nest is emptying. That's
It
actually.
is, and it was my last scene.
Yeah.
So I knew that too, going into it was this, like, fuck, how do I say goodbye to this thing? And I had already sent my son off to college, and I knew how hard that was. That transition of like, how do I not be a mom to you all the time? And this is just such a part of my life. I don't know how to not do this thing all the time. This is what we've always been doing. How are we stopping doing this? I don't understand. And she has so many complicated feelings. They come out in ways she doesn't even understand, and it's funny that she's in this kind of therapeutic science world. You're so unconscious. But all that stuff of, fuck, this is our last moment, this is our last scene, this is what we're doing. It was tough. It was really harder when I left, you know, than even in the scene.
Right.
It was like, fuck, how do I really...
Yeah.
A lot of people get through the kid going to college and then they cry the whole drive back.
That's
or
what
the
I
whole,
did, yeah.
Yeah, or the flight, or, you know.
I should have just climbed up over the rocks. It's always right now.
Holding the
Why don't you
picture.
clean your room right now?
Are you hungry? Do you have the munchies? Here, I have some.
Exactly. I brought you a tuna sandwich. Wash your car. That was part of what was weird about watching the movie was we didn't have a script. I didn't have the scenes other people were in. Rick would say, okay, he's going to sleep at his friend's house. You know, he's lying or whatever. But I wouldn't see that scene till I saw that scene in the movie theater. Like, that guy's kind of a perv. I don't like that friend of yours. You're never going there again. That's scary. You're playing with saw blades. What's happening here? So the mom was also watching the movie. And that was a very weird emotional experience. I was like, you're grounded.
But then out of that, you kind of got to appreciate Mason Sr., you know, your ex, as a father. I think when people leave our lives, you can see them any way you like, but it's often not really their reality. It's your last impressions or your whatever you feel about
the
them.
person they are when you interact with
Yeah.
them.
It's not who they are necessarily in the world, you know. And that can be, especially if there's a breakup and some bad feelings, that person is kind of forever a jerk or whatever. And they don't get your full humanity. But if you really could have a film crew follow them and actually witness them, and you talked about this, you know, that I hadn't thought about that at all until after Sundance. You're saying, and I was like, oh yeah, you didn't know those things. I mean, we did.
Yeah.
I was so fascinated by that.
That really blew my mind. I feel like it was a beautiful gift that I got as a human being in my life, which is so much more than usually watching a movie. This kind of, I don't know, gift of humanity where I was like, wow, yes, all of her feelings about her ex were legitimate. He didn't spend as much time with the kids as he should have, didn't give her as much money, didn't appreciate her as much as he should have, didn't always say the right thing. But when she got to be a fly on the wall and see who he was as a father with his kids when she wasn't there, he was such a great dad. And he was so supportive. And he was so much a part of who they grew up to be. And I thought, wow, you know, if you have good kids and you have another partner, they're probably doing something really right. That has nothing to do with your trigger shit, problems together. And we should just give each other more the benefit of the doubt and just recognize that beauty, you know. And so I felt that movie gave me a really great gift like that.
Well, that's the power of cinema. It really enforces all these perspectives. You know, you get pulled into the movie from everyone's perspective. And that's kind of how it felt making it. You talked about who we're collaborating with. Well, with each other, obviously, but all of us always felt we were collaborating with our own parents, collaborating with ourselves as the kids we were, collaborating with ourselves as parents at this moment. You know, it was kind of endless. And these kids growing up in the film, you know, it was especially poignant, you know, for me with Lorelai, you know, my own daughter. It was such a fun little sidebar to our lives, you know, little Samantha.
I mean, just to be submerged into a situation like that and just like allowed that space to figure out how to do that, how to use your life to, I mean, not only understand your own life, but to create a story that like other people can understand. And that, I mean, it's like, so, like in that behind the scenes thing, it's like I was talking about how I didn't know how to read at the beginning. I knew that obviously, that I didn't learn to read until I was 9, but I didn't put that together, that there were like several years where it was just like, there was no reader in the sides. It was just
Yeah, well, if we're ever going to pull it off on a movie, this was it. Yeah, remember year one, I did have some written dialogues, and you kind of handed it back and says, I can't really read yet. And I was like, okay, well, let's just, let's just talk about the scene. And you were so bright and you had so many ideas. It just wasn't a big deal. I mean, sure enough, soon enough, you have a stack of books. You're always reading, but it was like you were beautifully on your own path.
But that says a lot about you, too, because so many directors, I mean, I've known big directors that are like, I hired this actor because they knew all the lines. Like, come on, that's ridiculous. Of course somebody would have learned their lines before you started shooting. And somebody could have walked away from Ellar because he didn't have that skill set at 6. But, I mean, that's sort of the way you were, like, open to seeing the strengths everybody had at the moment and the gifts that people had to bring.
So let me take a moment here and roll it all the way back, though. I want to go to the first time Rick called you to see if you'd be interested in playing this part. And I almost feel like telling you each to play your role in the call, or maybe you should reverse roles and play the opposite person's role in the call. I don't know. Do it either way. I don't really care. But.
Oh, hey, Patricia. Don Phillips gave me your number, casting director we had both worked with.
Oh, hey.
Hey, remember we met that one time at that thing?
Yeah.
But,
yeah, man. How are you?
Yeah, I know. Don might have mentioned or whatever. I was like, got this weird movie. It's about, Ethan Hawke's going to play a dad, and I was thinking you'd be good for the mom, but it's a weird concept. So it's only a few days of work every year. I know you're busy, but we'll just have these kids growing up in the movie and life going on. So it's like we'll work a little bit every year.
What
for,
do you mean?
for 12
that sounds...
years.
So you're going to shoot every year for 12 years?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
That'll be good.
And you're thinking about me?
Yeah. I haven't really thought about anybody else. I know you had Enzo when you were kind of young. And it's young parents is sort of the subject. And
Well, fuck. If you're interested in me, I'm in.
then,
Then you were like, we don't have any money.
didn't you ask for a script? Like,
Oh, yeah. And then I was like, oh, shit. I guess I should ask about the part.
Or the script. Oh, yeah. Well, there's not a script. We're just going to work year by year. Here are the ideas. But, your character. Here's what she goes through. And
Gets married, divorced.
Yeah,
And then
but-
I was like, how are you getting this fucking thing financed?
yeah, IFC, Jonathan Searing. Who knows if they'll be here at the end, but we're getting this year filmed before. And so, yeah, I can't believe they're letting us do this, but it should be fun.
I was like, oh, my God, that's amazing.
It
That's
should be
genius.
Fun. It should be fun.
Yes.
And so, but yeah, I mean, what are you going to be doing for the next 12 years anyway?
Yeah. I was like, oh, that's the first thing you asked me. And I was like, I don't know, hustling, trying to get a job, raising my son,
Yeah.
doing what I'm doing now. What are you going to be doing?
We're old enough I'm older than you, and, it's like a decade. I mean, for the kids, it'll be a big deal. For us, 12 years from now, if we're lucky to still be here, I'll be trying to get a film made. You'll be looking for a part that
Exactly.
means something to you. But in the meantime, we'll have done this. So,
I was like, yes. Every cell in my body was like, yes.
And how many
Immediately.
minutes, like
this is
literally
a much abbreviated couple
Yeah, so-
hours.
No, because then he went into telling me about
Yeah.
you're going to go back to school, you're going to get remarried, you're
We
moving.
talked about our own parents a lot. We
Yeah,
talked
we
about
talked about our parents,
kids.
yeah.
We talked about everything.
Yeah, we spent a couple hours on the phone after that, yeah. And I felt that character.
Yeah.
I always felt that character, like who that was from that conversation.
I'm curious. I think your writer-director, has made it clear that he's given away certain autobiographical elements that sort of have factored into, your character. When he gives you a little of that, do you feel like you want more and more to inform your work, or is it just comfortable whatever it is that he does share with you? I'll ask you both the question.
We talked pretty openly. If anyone asked,
it was always pretty clear, I knew how much of it came from your life, and
How much?
certainly
How much did?
the structure, or I guess I don't know. I had an idea.
Forget. Like when you're
but
getting
it's
the haircut, did I say
you take what you get?
I
and
had
it's
my
just
haircut
kind of
once, and that's why it's in the movie, or I don't remember if I
say
talked
that
about
specifically,
Yeah.
but
I'm just saying it can be a slippery slope, right? Once you start to learn that certain things came direct.
Directors, it
suddenly I
would be
wanna know
very
everything about his
dictatorial.
life.
Right.
It would be very, this is my autobiographical thing, and that's not what happened, and this is what happened, and I felt like this. I mean, that's part of what was magic about this was Rick's mom and my mom went back to school. You know, my dad was a wild thing and understood this thing. You know, there were places where things crossed over and that aren't even in the movie.
Right.
Our moms both ended up getting cancer later, and that's not in the movie, but that's a commonality between us. Like at the beginning, the first year, he was like, said to Ethan and I, well, what are you guys gonna name your kids? A lot of directors don't give you that kind of input, you know? He knew it was autobiographical. He knew what his own name was. He could have named this character if he wanted to, but he also always left space for input.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of why this movie feels human, because
I mean, I think the autobiographical elements were like the structure very much, and just kind of like that was this thing. It created a space. You know, Rick and his experiences created the space for us to enter into, and you know, and
I wasn't interested in making an autobiographical recreation of my own maturation process. If I would have made it a period film, and it would have been a little more different. You know, it would just been different. And I wasn't interested in that. I wanted to that was kind of the impulse, or that was the structural device. And it's a place I always knew I could work from. I knew what was happening next year because I knew I had a year to kind of remember and fill in with my collaborators and just what made sense for the next year based on all the above.
But there was never specifics even of dialogue of like, my mom said exactly this, or, you know, he might say,
Well,
my mom did say this, oh, but Kathleen said that, and Ethan's mom said that, and you said this, so how about, he'd make his soup, you
It
know?
was really the opposite. I remember like saying goodbye to my mom at college. It was very quiet. You know, she didn't really say much of anything. You know, she was sitting at a table alone. As I left, that my last image, she was sitting at a table smoking, like, okay. You know, I was like, oh, what's wrong with me? Maybe she's in a, I don't know, mood. It didn't register. But over the years, I thought, oh, maybe she was going through something. Her youngest leaving.
She
But
couldn't
it just
handle it.
was lost on me as a completely self-absorbed 18-year-old or whatever. But that's not, I mean, that might have worked in the film, but it's like, no, we've come this far. We got to talk.
Did you, as you went through this, obviously it became, I would think, more and more apparent, but did you realize when you started out, and again, you were only 6, that a lot of his films, certainly this one, you know, just deal with this whole issue of time? Do you do it? I mean, those of us who are more analytical about, you know, certain ways certain directors make films go, like Richard Linklater, he's made, from Slacker forward, he's made so many films dealing with time in a specific time period, but not important. Not
I mean, I don't think.
Do that, because he hadn't done the second Sunrise yet.
Right.
So it
And
wasn't
I don't think the
obvious.
time warp effect of Boyhood is something that we had to think about, because the structure of the process of making it, that's what gave it that effect. It was just what we were doing in each moment was very much in that moment, you know, and very much,
right.
I don't know.
Like the baseball game and the bumpers and Ethan having to jump on the plane and
Yeah.
Lorelei bowling a strike.
Clutch. Yeah, Lorelei, one of the clutchest moments when she, you know, it's like, well, you got to bowl a strike here. That's what the story demands. And yeah, I think about her third role, but we could have been there all afternoon. Yeah.
Well, no, you couldn't, because Ethan had to go catch a plane.
Yeah, but it would have been like, okay, you know, I'd have
Right,
to piece
right,
it together like, okay, I'll cut away and
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
celebrate the strike, and then
Right.
people can go and we'll just keep filming, you know.
But
It
he
would
was
have
like,
been a pain.
You did it, Lorelei! Oh my God, I gotta get on the plane.
Ethan's excitement in that scene is real on a couple levels, you know.
Because he wasn't legally allowed to be in Texas making that movie, because he was shooting another movie.
Yeah.
He snuck into
A lot
town.
of this was kind of like, you have to get away for that. And maybe we'd have a day and a half. Maybe we'd have 2 days. You know, it was always a thing with each other's, with schedules. It would happen every year. We'd finish, we'd take a break, just for a little while, and then it was like on the production end, it was like, well, what do you think next time? What's the subject matter? Is that going to be summer? Is that going to be fall? And then it's like, start talking to everybody about when they're available. And most of the time it was you on a weekend when you weren't shooting your show, those 7 years. And it was like, you would come in, like, I was just so impressed with your just total professional abilities, not just trooper, but ability to, like, you were worked straight through 24 hours straight. They handed you 12 new pages of dialogue the night before. You film a whole day, fly here, we rehearse late, and the next morning we're shooting. And here's all this new material. I don't know how you were able to.
I so needed it for my own self.
Yeah.
You know, and that was part of what was really hard when it finished, was like, it's sort of like if you go home to your aunts or uncles for Thanksgiving every year, and then suddenly they're like, by the way, you'll never be coming back again. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean we're not doing this anymore? I was just, couldn't really wrap my head around that. Like, that was always the promise. That was always the plan. But when it was actually happening, I was like, this fucking sucks. I don't agree.
You shot film from the get-go because you wanted a consistency in the way the film looked over that span of time. But did you, as you went from year to year, is there anything you changed in the style in which you shot?
Tried not to. I remember some people saying, oh, your filmmaking and the style, you get better as it goes along. I was like, I wasn't like 19 when I started. I was like early 40s or whatever. I was like, I'd made a lot of films. I really wanted a consistent look. That wasn't a compliment to say it gets better. There were innovations and other gadgetry and a lot of stuff going on in cinema, but I really was striving for this to feel like one film, one vibe, one look, one kind of language. So that was the goal. I think people, when they wanted to impose something on the 12 years, but it was just kind of a boring answer to say, no, shot on film the whole way. You know, it was all meant to be one thing, so.
But I think that again says a lot about you, because I think a lot of people would really, you do have 12 years to second guess yourself. And the mind is such a tricky place, and you have 12 years of new choices and 12 years of new toys, 12 years. Mm-hmm. A lot of people would get lost in that whole.
To me, it's what you do every film you head into. It's just a storytelling methodology. You just kind of like, okay, here are the rules for this film. Here's the tone. Here's the vibe. Here's the style. Here's what we're doing. It was just doing that over 12 years and not trying to question it too much. But if I ever had any doubts, and it was never anything I even said out loud, it was kind of like yearly, kind of writing the outline that we'd have to turn into IFC and what happens next year and thinking about it. If I ever had any doubt, it was just, is it, you know, could there be more? You know, could it be bigger, more dramatic? Should there be bigger moments or something? Is it too small, subtle, too little things, you know, like, could be telling a bigger story, but that would just wash over me. Like at the end, the worst version is like, well, nothing happens. Nothing big happens. But I knew that wouldn't be the case, but every now and then I'd get insecure, all this effort, all this time, and it's just all this little stuff that isn't a big deal.
But we would talk about it, and I remember you defending that and saying, it is the little moments in life. It is the smell of your grandma's house when you ran through it. It is those little moments. And I don't want to have to do those moments, you know?
So did you wonder about that, or were you worried on Rick's behalf or anything
There was
about
moments that would wash over me too, like, I hope so, I care about these people, but fuck, I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, seeing it with the audience for the first time, those couple times the audience are expecting, okay, here it goes. Whether it's the saw blade, someone's gonna get their hand cut off, or, you know, your dad telling you, now don't text and drive, and sure enough, you're on your phone actually briefly, so that equals you should be getting in a car wreck. And you think, we can't in one film uncondition an audience, even though they've been watching. Right. It's a little depressing, like they're an hour and a half in.
From any story.
But also it reminds you in life, like, you know, in raising kids, how you are constantly skirting little things that could go wrong.
Oh, yeah, always.
That little accident that does happen sometimes. Like, it's miraculous that they're here and they're healthy and they're alive and they made it, you know?
Yeah, so much of our brain is really spent averting danger and worst case scenarios. That's just kind of the survival part. It's not the fun part, but there it is. You know, you got to deal with it, especially as a parent. Never does it kick in bigger when you're responsible for someone else. Damn, that's an obligation.
This is an embarrassing question for you, but do you feel responsible for yourself and all grown up now?
Do you?
No.
Good answer, Ella, good answer.
I don't know. No, I mean, I think about that a lot, and I wonder if, I think there's a big kind of push in our culture to grow up really fast and to leave, the supposed kind of childhood version of yourself and your childhood relationship to your family and just to your life behind, and it's easy to do that, and there's a lot of things that help us do that, and it's easy to forget, and it's easy to kind of think that you're grown up. And I don't, think that ever really happens, and certainly like throughout my life having this experience, but then especially in the last, 2 years, like watching this document of myself changing, at least just physically, and emotionally and of course in a lot of ways too. My emotional journey is in the film, and it's constantly reminding me that that there is no grown up, and there is no point that you reach when you're done. And that like all of, to leave that behind would be a mistake.
I remember starting off, like before the film, I remember telling someone, well, the most kind of constant relationship that you can count on, each individual, is the lifetime relationship, the one that never goes away, is you with your younger self. That one's always going to be there and always be changing, maybe, as you get older. And that's a pretty fascinating long-term relationship, how you feel about yourself at different ages. That changes, too. It just depends on your mood. You could look at a stage of your life and go, oh, those were really horrible years, or like, that was pretty good. I had a pretty good childhood, or I had a really bad childhood. That could change in a day.
But either way, it's you.
Yeah.
And to like...
But then when you see yourself, like you see a home movie or
that.
you see a picture of yourself in first grade, you go, well, yeah, that's technically me, but physically it's, is it you? These are kind of simple questions, but there's something kind of, eternal about them. So I was kind of thinking in one film, in one sitting, you would kind of get that would be the question. Are you growing up? What does it mean? Are you, is the same, these four people we see at the end of the movie, is that them at the beginning, and to what degree? And, it's basic questions we all ask ourselves and have to deal with. Yeah, so.
The record of you that exists in this film, of course, is Mason, not you. So that's
Yeah.
How does that feel again a year later now?
That's definitely an interesting thing that's been happening for me. It's just like, I think when the film came out, there was this, that was unclear to a lot of people, I think, that character is not just me.
Right.
To the point that like there were several people that just straight up thought it was a documentary, and would like argue that it was like, no, it's a doc. I'm like, no, I promise it's not. Like, it's really not. But but to the point where I started to like, I don't know, like question my own existence of like, am I that person? Like, I don't know. I mean, not like not quite that metaphysically,
Fair.
but just on a personality of like, I don't know, because it never happened making the film because we had so much time in between filming that I did go back to my life and I did get to be myself. But then releasing the film and then suddenly for a year, not really being myself and not really spending any time in my own life, it's like I started to wonder. And then it's like, that's in the last few months, so I'm finding like, okay, like I am a real person and that's a character, and like That's like, okay. I'm okay with that.
Ellar's life kind of slowly comes back. But yeah, I remember my funniest moment was Lincoln Center, Lincoln Plaza, you know, one of the probably more sophisticated audiences in the world, did a Q&A after, and then a guy, I was leaving the theater and he just came up to me. He looked like a dentist, a middle-aged dentist. He looked at me and says, well, how did you pick the family? This is after I'd done a Q&A. And I don't know if you were there or Ethan was there or something, but I was like, how did I pick that? He thought it was a documentary about, Patricia and Ethan aren't married. They're actors. Everyone's an actor. That's my daughter.
Yeah.
But like, he didn't seem like he was crazy, but it was like a logical question. I was like, it was very odd.
So I covered the ground I wanted to, but I wondered if there's things that you guys are
Boy, you're talking to a year ago this time, we would have all said, bye. No.
Well, you should talk a little bit about how, I mean, a year ago was, you know, not pleasant, right? The way the system now.
You know what? It was hard. It was a weird scene for sure.
But we were together.
But we were together, and that was the awesome thing. It was sort of like, how the fuck did we end up in this room? This is crazy. But we get to sit at the table with each other.
We were always, it was just, you know, just spending time together.
I would try to sometimes reframe the way that I felt about it, because so much of my career was like, yeah, I'm not going to that party. I'm not doing that thing. But I sort of felt like our movie was a representation of all the kids in high school or any group dynamic that kind of are ignored, invisible. Like we were like representing all of them, like just normal people, life, human people who care about the artistic vision of things, openness, vulnerability. Like, it's not just about us even, you know? We're going to the prom on their behalf, you know? Like,
Representing, like, yeah, regular people to such a degree, and kind of indie films, like all these films that they're big old productions. And here, our little $3 million film was kind of somehow qualified to be in that scene at that level. I remember it was the day of the Oscars. I looked at Ellar and I said, well, no matter what, we're done today. There's nothing, this is the end. I can't wait for this to all be over, and today is the last day.
What did you do the week after that?
Oh God, I don't know. I went home and it was rough. It was rough. There was definitely an emotional hangover that, like, everyone kind of said that to me. I think, like, you know, like, this is intense, but just like the calm after the storm is going to be something else entirely. And I don't know that I really believed that, but it was very true. It was definitely more confusing in a way to be done with all of that. Like I was saying, after just kind of like having so little time to be myself, then suddenly it's like I'm back at home and it's like, wait, who was I? Where was I? What was I doing?
Over the course of this year, have you continued to have people relate to you, you know, on a really personal level about the movie, or is it sort of in a more dormant phase now? Does it feel like you still having that? Not every day, but are you still having people really relate and insist on talking to you about it?
Yeah. People come up. But I think it's like now there's a certain self-consciousness about it. You know, people almost like, I don't know. It's like, just because that was so publicized and the reaction was so publicized, it's like anyone who, at least for me, like people, it's not the same vulnerability that it was at first. You know, people come up and they're almost like aware, they're so aware how many people have come up with this, that they're, it's, I don't know,
They're last in the line, and they kind of know it.
And I try, you know, you try to engage with people, and like, you know, it's like, no, like, this is real, and you feel this, and that's okay. But still, it's like, sometimes you're just living your life. I don't know.
No, it's kind of sweet. Now, I was at a memorial service a week ago for a friend's mom, and in Houston. And he came up to, I hadn't seen him in a couple years, but I got it from a close friend. He said he and his wife came out of the theater. They saw Boyhood. And a woman just wandered up to them, kind of crying and says, "Can I talk to you?" Like she was there alone, but she saw them as middle-aged, probably parents, and so she just wanted to talk to someone. They recalled the
That's
story.
beautiful.
This is last week. You know, I was just, and I thought, oh, that's really sweet. And I'm hearing it secondhand from a year before, but you know, I was kind of like, oh, that's really sweet that whole story that someone would want to talk. It would have affected them enough. And it was all about her son had gone off to college and all. You know, it's like, I don't know. I think that kind of continues and probably will. You know, these are perennial issues and life markers, I think, so. But I'm interested in our relationship, you know, to this over time. Like, it's only been a year. It feels still pretty fresh. But if we jump ahead, Ellar's 36 years old. You know, we're all, you know, like,
You ready for that?
what will it feel like then? You know, I have no idea. I kind of look forward to, hopefully, you know, what its super long time feelings about this. Where will it go and how will we all? Yeah.
I still feel like if I watch it, I'm just gonna get hysterical.
You are.
Yeah.
It's okay to be hysterical sometimes.
But I think
help
it'll
your
be
mom
more.
out here.
I think it'll be more that it's over. That will be like, I don't know. It's weird because it was a beautiful love affair. It never got fucked up. It never got ugly. So it's sort of like, why did we break up again? I don't understand.
That's why
There's
we
nothing
do
wrong.
art. We can control the environment. It's ours. And, you know, these relationships that don't have to, these are kind of the great relationships that you have because it's so your choice. You know, you can't pick your family. You know, your own partners that can be very fraught when you're so in. This is like the parallel universe that we all want to live in, that it can kind of go forever. It's wonderful. I think isn't that partially why we all do it in a way?
But it's not always like this.
No.
Like a lot of times we do it, but we still have with a fraught partner. Shit,
Yeah.
man. How did
Yeah,
I end
that-
up with you again?
That can happen. Yeah.
But yeah. So it's a very beautiful gift.
And yeah.
On that, thank you.
Cool. There we go.
It's very nice. It's actually so nice.
You know how hard it is for people to sit still for 30 seconds?
So I think like right after Christmas, I'll be there for probably 2 weeks.
So that's